So today we had a little test in class, not a test really, more of a quiz. And this quiz, which is in the homework category only, it's going to give you guys a parabola like this. And you'll have to know the name for this spot here. What's that called again? The vertex. And you'll have to know for the name for the dotted line that runs through the middle of it. What's that called? Axis of symmetry. Like x equals -3 or something. See, that's an axis of symmetry. It's the line that runs right through the middle of it. Okay, the next thing is they might ask you for the increasing interval. And kids get really confused because both ends are up. That doesn't mean both ends are increasing. Do you get it's only increasing there? Okay, so what would the increasing interval be? From what to what? -3 to infinity. Very good. I'd also accept I on F. Would you please then write the decreasing interval? Take a guess what the decreasing interval would be and write it on your paper, on your iPad. Okay, I don't see another number to start with, but it would start from way to the left, so that's -infinity until it stops right at that axis of symmetry line, which is -3, -infinity to -3. What about the domain on this thing? Well, I know it goes through -3, comma, let's say it's -2. The domain on this thing is, well, domain is left to right. I'll just write those as helpers for you. And range is from down to up. What's the domain? What's the range? Ian, what's the domain in this red parabola?
Which one?
There's only one red parabola. Oh, sorry, there's two Ians. My bad.
Right next to each other.
All right. I'm going to go with you, Ian, eh? What's the domain of this?
-infinity.
Yep, -inf and inf. Okay. Jack Sexton, what's the range of it?
-3 to infinity.
So close. Try again. And I get that -3 is right there, so you're like, isn't it -3? Nope. -2 to inf. Why? Because the range is about the y values. These are y's. And that's the y value. So, yep, that's a good question. Infinities don't need brackets, so 3 out of the 4 of these are parentheses. But since it touches -2, you are correct. There is a bracket right there. And I would go back and check those right before I turned in my test, because I would say that's the most common mistake. You've seen me do it more than once. Those little mistakes they're just annoying on your test, because you could have had an A. I would probably take my test and probably get an A, but I would definitely get 1 or 2 wrong, and because I make too many dumb mistakes. But that's okay. You can still get an A with that. All right, on to x-intercepts. Wait a minute. This one goes through that spot. Is that an x-intercept? A lot of people get curious about, like, isn't that a y-intercept? It's both. It's an x-intercept and it's a y-intercept. So would that count as one of the x-intercepts? Yes, it would. And what's this other x-intercept? I never said, but let's say it was at -6. The way you'd write that, x-intercept is where y is 0, so it'd be -6, comma 0. Don't forget, if you're not sure on the test, ask me. But it's always safer to give it as a point. Okay? That makes sense? And this one was 0, 0. And those are both x-intercepts. All right. So what if I give you an equation like this? Y equals negative, parentheses, x plus 4 squared minus 5. That is really hard to keep straight, but would you please try to multiply it all the way out to get standard form? A ton of people are going to screw up negatives. Just practice it once. We will start your quiz before we head to lunch, and then you'll finish it after lunch, and we'll even grade it in class. Okay, so. All right, Max, did you tell us how you started?
Okay, I took it as x plus 4, parentheses around that, and I did that twice.
Nice, that's exactly what you needed to do. And if anybody did it that way, you have like an 80% higher chance of getting it right now. Okay, and then I'm gonna do this part, I hope I don't screw it up. 8x plus 16, I think.
Yep.
And then I got a negative here and a negative 5, so now let's distribute that negative, and Max, what do you think the final answer was?
Oh, my final answer?
Yes, please.
Negative 8. Negative x squared minus 8x minus 4.
And the negative 16 and the negative 5 make negative 21. You are so right. Who had that one exactly right? Sweet. More people than I thought. Are there any parts of that you want me to explain? Okay. Then, last kind that we haven't talked about. Y equals 4, x plus 3, and 2x minus 7. And they ask you, what's the x-intercepts? Well, I can tell you one of them off the top of my head. It's negative 3. Because the x-intercepts are the things that make those parentheses 0. And I can do that one in my head. Can you tell me the other one? The x-intercepts are where y is 0, so I'm putting a 0 with it. X-intercepts. Kennedy, tell me what to set equal to 0. Which part do I set equal to 0? That part needs to be set equal to 0. And then I solve it. Adding 7 to both sides. 2x equals 7. X equals 7 over 2. Who is able to actually pull that off? All right, that'll probably be the hardest question for you, I guess. I thought the other one would be, but you get what I just did there? Just look at it. All I did is set it equal to 0. I put this part right here, equal to 0. And then I just solved that little mini equation. Okay, and what is that thing? That's an x-intercept. I mean, if I graphed it, I know it's a U shape, and I know that it goes through negative 3, and I know it goes through some other thing. This happens to be 7 divided by 2 is the same as 3.5. So over here, it's at like 3.5. That's the two x-intercepts, so it goes like that. All right. Somewhere down here would be the vertex. I don't know exactly where. I can't tell from this because this is not in vertex form. But if it was, I'd be able to see the vertex. How do I know it's a right side up U? Because there's no negative in the front. If there was a negative in the front, it would be upside down, but it's not. Okay, there's a good review. And I think the best thing to do right now is to give you this quiz, and to just make it a little more fun as a Friday, I'm going to give you a partner to do it with. And I'm going to pause for a second while we work through who's partners with who. It's going to be somebody right near you. Well, the last couple of minutes here, I'm going to let the groups finish up that are still working. I'm going to just tell you a couple last things and then let you start the Schoology quiz on it. So if I gave you an equation and I said, I don't know what the equation has in front, but I know the graph looks like this. Have you guys figured out by now that that means there's a negative in the front of the graph? A negative right here. If you don't know that yet, you got to get that straight. That if there's a negative in the front, then it's an upside down parabola. If you can get that one thing, that's the biggest thing for today. So there's a number there too. If there's no other number, do you get that that means there's a negative 1 right there? Okay, so if there isn't any other number, then the A value, this is called the A value, if it's negative, that means that you have a mountain. Okay, so I don't know how to get like a neato way to memorize this, but if this is negative, then this thing will be a maximum. Okay, if it's not negative, then it'll be the other way around. It would be like this, and then it would be a minimum spot. Okay. that's really the main thing. Other than that, the only other thing I can say is if there's a number in front like this, a lot of people ask, does that change what the vertex is? And here's where the vertex comes from. Does it feel like that 2 changes anything about the vertex? No, it doesn't. The vertex is still right there, which would be, careful, -4, -4. And the 2 doesn't affect that at all. So what does the 2 affect? Well, if it's negative ever, we just talked about that. If it was -2 in front, if there was a negative, then it's an upside down parabola. The only other thing this does is it stretches it. Do you remember from when we graphed simple y equals x squared and then we put like a 2 in front of it? That was a vertical stretch. Remember that? Okay, so if we threw something like this on the test, what if we had a 2x minus 3 squared plus 4? Would you still remember that that's a vertical, what did I just say? Stretch. What's this thing? Right or left 3? That's right 3. And last but not least, the 4. What's that 4 mean? Up 4. Okay. Well, still in your head? Okay, so what's the biggest thing for today? It's the A term. And what's the biggest thing that can happen to the A term? If it's negative. If you stick a negative here, what happens to this whole picture? It just flips upside down. Okay, it's a vertical reflect. So if your A term's negative, then you have something like this, and therefore you have a maximum. If your A term is not negative, then it'll be right side up parabola, and you have a minimum. All right, I think you're ready. That's it. And all you got to do is go start the Schoology quiz. You got a partner built in that you just worked with on that other thing. Why don't you and your partner try to crank through the rest of that Schoology quiz together, and then you have no homework if you can finish that. Maybe you won't finish and then the rest will be your homework, but try to get at least started together. And then we're going to be, the end of the video is coming here right now, but we're going to be grading this U6 L1 to L3 quiz that everybody just finished in class. If you missed today, if you're absent today, just come ask me about that quiz and we'll talk about it one-on-one.